Welcome to the Molecules of Life notes as we went over them in class here in November 2023. The Molecules of Life is also covered in Chapter 4 of our textbook, so you can check that out for additional information. And let's start off by talking about this slide here, how carbon is at the center of our molecules. The molecules that are in a living thing are said to be organic. That means from an organism, plant, animal, single-cell bacteria, microorganism, up to all animals and plants. So organic compounds are those that do contain carbon, and then if you put the prefix inorganic or the IN in front of organic, that means that it's not alive. So when you take chemistry class, it will be described as an organic chemistry class or an inorganic chemistry class. This is usually 2 years of chemistry in college. I'm going to talk to you about why life on Earth, all life on Earth, is said to be carbon-based. Carbon is the molecule like a tinker toy. It's going to have things that connect to it and just keep the chain going. At each of these intersections, you'll be able to have 4 things attached to it, and so it can go on for 4 carbons, or as it says on the next slide, it could have up to 4 million building blocks of carbon. That's why we're carbon-based life forms. It's at the heart or backbone of our carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and our DNA. All biological molecules have carbon inside of it. Why is it that life on Earth is carbon-based? It's really shown in this picture. On the left, it's a schematic of a carbon atom. Look, carbon has 6 protons and 6 neutrons inside of its nucleus. What is the atomic number and also the mass number? The number at the top of the box for carbon is 6. The number at the bottom is 12. This number here is the atomic number. The atomic number shows the number of protons. Well, all atoms are neutral. Since protons are positive, it needs to have 6 electrons. It must also have 6 electrons that are negatively charged, and so 6 plus added to 6 minus equals 0, a neutral charge. So all atoms are neutral. Inside of the nucleus, you also have 6N. That stands for neutrons. If you add 6 protons and 6 neutrons, that's what gets you to 12. The 12 number at the bottom here, that is the mass number. The mass number is what is in the nucleus. It makes up 99.9% of the mass. So it has 6 electrons. Those are red. I'm going to click and type E, negative, which means that it has 6 negative electrons. Those are shown in red. How many electrons does it have on its outer ring? 4. It has 4 valence electrons. From our previous notes called Chemistry of Life notes, we talked about the parts of the atom, and the electrons in the outer orbit or outer shell are going to be called the valence. This is where chemistry takes place. Chemistry is in the outer electrons only, not the 2 that are in the inside. I want to draw a quick schematic of the periodic table. I'm going to draw 2 rows with 8 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Then on the top corner, we have a first row that has a box on the top and on the right. This is the first 3 rows of the periodic table. It has an organization for rows and for columns. We went over that in our previous notes, but let's sketch it right here so you understand why carbon is so important to all molecules in a living organism. Look over at the schematic of a carbon atom. How many rings or orbits of electrons does it have? 2. So carbon will be in the second row. The rows here are the number of electron orbits. Let's go ahead and write that in. Since carbon is in the second row, it has 2 electron orbits. That's what the rows mean. What about the columns? The columns here represent how many electrons it actually has in the valence shell or outer ring. Carbon has 4 electrons in its outer ring, so it will be in the 4th column. I'll put a C right here. That's where carbon lives. The columns mean the numbers of valence electrons. So the periodic table is well organized, and it's pretty easy to get the information out of it. It's really going to help you understand chemistry. The rows represent how many orbits of electrons. The columns mean how many electrons you have in your outer electron shell called the valence shell. Let's take a look at hydrogen right here. Hydrogen, its electron is green. How many rings of electrons does it have? How many shells? 1. So it's going to be in the top column. Hydrogen here is up on the top left, right there. It was hard to see, right there. The simplest atom that there is. How many electrons does it have? 1 in its valence shell, so it would be in the first left column, all by itself. Do you recall that we were talking about how important this column is over here on the right? These are noble. They do not react. What makes them so special is that they have everything, just like the noble class, like over in England, the royal family. They're the largest landowners, the richest family. They have everything. Think about an atom. If it has everything, it would have all of its electrons full in the valence shell. Over in the schematic of the carbon atom, do you see the blue? This blue right here represents a missing electron. How many electrons is it missing? 4 blue shaded areas. It's missing 4 electrons. So if it gained 4 electrons, it would then have 8. Where would it be? It would find itself over feeling like it's noble. Every atom on the periodic table wants to be full, wants to live on the right side of the periodic table in essence. They all want to achieve the full status. And so how many is it missing? 4 electrons. Every electron that is missing, it will form a bond. Look at the right schematic and you can see that it has a red and a green dot. Those represent electrons. The red dot came from carbon. The green dot came from hydrogen. They share a pair of electrons. That is a bond. That's a chemical bond. And in this case, they're sharing an electron, so that is a covalent bond. Carbon will form 4 covalent bonds. You can write it out like a line. It is going to form 4 things next to it. Maybe a carbon, maybe a hydrogen, maybe an oxygen or a hydrogen. So you get the idea? This will just be a chain that goes on for thousands, and actually it can go up to millions of carbons and other things attached to it. That slide, it's a very big, important slide. Has a lot of information that was in the chemistry of life. And it's all so that you understand why life needs to have carbon. Now we're going to go over the 4 organic molecules: carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and nucleic acids. These are all macro. They are big molecules, and they're made from little pieces called monos. Mono means one, and a mer is like a building block. So you're going to make small molecules come together to make big molecules. All of these are huge molecules. So they're all called macromolecules, or macros for short. Hey, if you are into nutrition, if you're an athlete, you really watch what you eat. You want to make sure you have proper fuel, you're getting enough protein to build your muscles. And if you use an app, these are referred to as macros. Also in that health and nutrition app, to track your the health and quality of your food intake, there are micros. Micros are vitamins and minerals. Macros, 4 organic molecules. Micros, vitamins and minerals. So the 4 macros: carbohydrates for energy, lipids store even more energy, proteins, it's mostly to build us up. That's why it says structural. It can be part of your hair, it can be part of your immune system, your connective tissue, ligaments, things like that. And it's also got many important biochemistry features to it, like speeding up your chemical reactions, and helps to make hormones and all that. And then nucleic acids, a very large molecule that is our genetic code in our nucleus. That's the DNA. So you need to understand all the building block, the monomer names, and what they build, what type of macromolecule. For example, carbohydrates, they're synonymous with the word sugar. But sugar can come in many forms: simple sugars and complex sugars. So the basic building blocks of sugars are a simple one sugar. What's the building block of fats? It's fatty acid and another molecule called glycerol. The building blocks of proteins, amino acids. There's only 20 different amino acids. And if you're a bodybuilder or trying to build up your muscle, you might even buy protein powder, and on there it will say filled with 20 essential amino acids. Hey, you need to have those, otherwise you can't build up your body and your proteins without the proper building blocks. And the building block or monomer of a nucleic acid is a nucleotide. So make sure you spend a little time understanding this. There are Quizlets for this unit. It's posted at our biology Quizlet class page that we have. The information is found in announcements and also in the study guide over at our Canvas module. So this concept about small molecules making large ones is kind of analogous to Legos. Each individual Lego piece here is a monomer, a building block, a one-piece building block. And it can make this awesome, huge, have you seen it? Over at Lego store at Disneyland, it is the big, huge, fire-breathing dragon. Underneath it is a knight fighting him. It took 1.2 million pieces to put that together. Could you imagine that? If you had to do it yourself, 5,000 hours divided by 24 hours in a day, how many days straight would that be? So that's an analogy for our big macromolecules. They are made by putting together not Legos, but monomers. So the monomers are the Legos, the macromolecule would be the huge giant piece that you put together. And if you put two monomers together, you get a dimer, that's two. If you add three monomers together, you get a trimer. After that, you kind of stop counting and you just call it a polymer, which means many. And how many? It can go up to 4 million. From 4 to 1, 2, 3 millions of monomers putting it together. The smallest polymer is 4, and it can be even larger. Cells are going to make large molecules from smaller molecules, so we've established that. So this slide is really just showing you the names monomers coming together make polymers. So the most difficult concept really here is in these two words. Circle them and let's break it down. Dehydration, I'm going to not call it just a reaction, I'm going to call it a synthesis. What does synthesize mean, or synthesis? It means build. What does dehydrate mean? That means to take out a water molecule, remove water. So what does it mean to build something and take out water while you do that? Look at the full sentence. If you're going to make a polymer from small building blocks, you are going to remove water in the process. So in other words, if I have a monomer here, and I'm adding another monomer to build a polymer, that's like a chemical reaction, very messy. There's an arrow. Monomer plus monomer are the reactants, yields a polymer, and you also have to show that it also removed water in the process. So it's going to take an H out of that one, it's going to take an OH out of that one, and put those together and throw away a piece of water in order to make a polymer. Boy, I really squished that into a corner there, but you get the idea. Monomer and monomer reacting together, they have to remove one water molecule combined between the two of them in order to make a new product of a polymer. If you look at this next one here, in order to break apart this polymer, you are going to go in the reverse. So write it out in this equation. A polymer is the reactant, and if you are going to make a monomer and another monomer, you have to put water over here on this side, and one of the H's is going to end up going over here, and the other OH is going to go over there to patch up the hole that was made when you slice this guy. It's got broken ends, and the pieces of water are going to seal it, fix that. So that's the chemical reactions. It's not going to get any more detailed than that, but those are the two directions. Two monomers are going to react to make one polymer up here, and the reverse. Taking a polymer and breaking it apart is going to be the other chemical reaction. And they have names to it. If you think about it, it makes sense, and we can work through that. So the four main categories of biological molecules are listed there at the bottom. Carbs, proteins, lipids. Hey, that sounds like a food label, doesn't it? This is what is on a food label, and these are the ingredients of our foods. Nucleic acids, hey, these are inside of cells that you eat. If you eat a plant, you're going to take apart the cells, and this is the DNA inside of the cells. You're going to use those building blocks of nucleic acids, and you are then going to use it to go into your own nucleus when you form new cells. So in essence, all four of these, you are what you eat. If you don't eat these proteins in your diet, you can't build your body up. So let's talk about the individual macromolecules.
Most biological molecules are very large and
Here's
are built by
chemical
assembling
reaction.
small molecules, or monomers,
Dehydration
into long
synthesis.
chains. The resulting molecules are called macromolecules, or polymers.
Watch the water molecule.
A process of linking monomers,
Come out of
called
this.
dehydration synthesis, involves the removal of two
Comes another
hydrogen
water.
atoms and one oxygen atom to form
In
water.
order to make a large molecule,
One way this might happen is diagrammed here,
you're going to take water
where
out.
several generic monomers are shown with OH groups that could be used for linking. The animation illustrates the joining together of monomers by dehydration synthesis, catalyzed by a polymerase enzyme, and the reverse process, in
All
which
right.
added water
Gonna split
results
water
in hydrolysis,
in order
catalyzed
to
by a hydrolase enzyme.
split the polymer into smaller pieces, hydrolysis. So hydro means water and lyse means to split. So in that animation, you saw water come in there. And why was water needed? Because it was used to put one OH right there. That's half of water, and one H right there. As you split that polymer right here, it had a broken edge that needed to be patched with the ingredients of water, which is readily available. So carbohydrates, moving on. Carbohydrates are energy molecules, and they also have a small building block. The word carbohydrate, that is the word for a polymer. That's the large molecule name. The small molecule name, it is called a monosaccharide. That prefix mono is popping up, isn't it? Mono means one. Saccharide means sugar. So a monosaccharide is a simple one sugar. Add a bunch of those monomers or Lego pieces together and you got a bigger creation. The bigger creation is a carbohydrate. If you add two monosaccharides, that's 1 + 1 sugar, you're going to make a double sugar. That's what a disaccharide is. And again, to make something larger, you are going to have to pull out water. Remember, it's dehydration synthesis, like from that last video clip. So carbohydrates come in simple form. If you take Gatorade, for example, Gatorade is really drinking glucose, the simplest sugar. Your body doesn't have to digest that. Here's glucose right over here. Glucose is a simple sugar, does not need digesting, and it goes into your stomach, doesn't digest, goes into your intestines, doesn't digest, goes right into your bloodstream. And then it goes to your cells that need it in the mitochondria to make energy. Every one of your cells is hungry for glucose. So if you go to the doctor and they want to check your health, they will check the level of sugar in your blood. That's called your blood glucose level. It has to be a certain level. If it's too low, not good. If it's too high, not good. And a condition called diabetes is a problem regulating glucose. And what is needed to regulate glucose is insulin. So somebody diabetic is lacking insulin, and without that, they have too much sugar building up in their blood. The sugar doesn't get into the cells. So glucose is the goal. If you eat pasta, for example, that's full of starch. Eat potato chips, full of starch. And that's a big molecule of sugar. Notice how it says it's a polysaccharide? So it's called a complex carb. Simple carbs are glucose, a monomer of sugar, monosaccharide. Polysaccharides are complex and they take a little digesting. If you know of a long distance runner, they eat a lot of starch. They eat a lot of complex carbs because that's a slow release energy. If you drink Gatorade, instant energy within minutes. Eat a full starch meal and it might take 12 hours for your body to digest it. It slowly puts the glucose into your bloodstream. So you have a constant supply of glucose going into your bloodstream. Now, carbohydrates are also in the form of cellulose that plants need. That's the hard outer covering on plant cells. Plants not only have a cell membrane like that, but they also have a harder outer covering, and that is the cellulose, this outer part. That's what gives plants some strength so they can grow tall against gravity without a skeleton. But like Mr. Krabs over here, it's called chitin. Chitin is part of an exoskeleton, like crabs and lobsters. That is made out of a carbohydrate called chitin.
Sometimes organisms link sugar molecules in pairs to form disaccharides. Here are several examples.
Dehydration
Plants make
synthesis.
sucrose by joining glucose and fructose. Sucrose circulates in plant sap, and we obtain it from sugarcane and sugar beets and use it as table sugar. Lactose is formed by joining galactose and glucose. Lactose is the disaccharide that gives milk its sweet taste. Maltose consists of two linked glucose molecules. Digestion of starch, in a sprouting seed or in the intestine of an animal, produces this disaccharide.
Moving on to lipids. Lipids are not liking water. If you are cleaning in the kitchen, you've got soap there, and if you have greasy pans, the grease will go to the top of the water, and the soap helps to carry that away, but you cannot mix water and fat. They do not dissolve, they don't mix in solution. They are separated from each other. That makes fats a really good membrane that goes around our cells. Our cells are made out of 75% water, so what better thing to hold them in than a cell membrane made out of fat? And it actually has 2 layers of fat for a double wrapper. So that's one main function of fats in all of our cells. But fat is a great energy storage molecule. We talked about how glucose is a good energy storage molecule. We measure energy in calories, right? So a carb can have 4 calories per gram of carbs. Fats, on the other hand, twice the amount of energy. It packs twice the energy, 9 calories per gram of fat. So if we overeat anything, carbohydrates, fats, or proteins, our body will store that excess fuel that we have as measurable calories, and it will put them into our fat cells. And then when our body needs calories that we're not eating, it will go into its reserves. So fat is actually a part of our evolution where it helps us to get through times of famine, because we were hunting and gathering, and sometimes you had a lot to eat, so you would eat enough to get fat, just like a hibernating animal They're going to get fat before they go into hibernation. Sometimes we're forced to if we don't have readily available food. You've also heard of words like cholesterol and steroids and hormones. All of those have a big component of fat as well. Moving on to proteins. Proteins have a wide range of functions. They also have a building block, and it's coming up on the next slide. So proteins are very complex, and proteins have a lot of functions. Do you remember from those two little video clips we just saw in this presentation? It showed how molecules would come together with the help of another molecule that came in there and held them in place. That's what a enzyme does. It is that thing that has a perfect shape where two other things will come in and be able to bond together. Without the help of this enzyme right here, these two other molecules, let's call them molecule A and B, they wouldn't find each other. But the enzyme attracts them to it in an area called the active site right here and enables them to get close enough where they would react together. That's how it speeds it up. And you'll see that in a lot of animations. A cell membrane that I was drawing, 2 layers of fat, sometimes it has embedded in it a protein that acts as a channel. So this is a protein pore where a molecule can find its way where it normally would not be able to get through. So a transport protein allows a molecule like molecule A up above to get down inside here where the enzyme is, so A and B can bond together. So it's called a transport protein. Our antibodies are our immune system and fighting force, another really important part of protein building those up. And there's other functions too with muscles and our connective tissue with collagen. So we're basically made out of proteins. We're fueled by carbohydrates, and our fat is our storage reserve for our energy. So proteins are made from monomers, and the monomer for a protein is called an amino acid. Each one of these circles of different colors are individual amino acids. There happen to be 20 different types. But these 20 can go in a lot of different configurations. Maybe millions of these monomers of amino acids have to join together in dehydration synthesis to form a chain. And proteins are really complex. They start out as a chain, and then they have to fold over each other, and then they start twisting, and then those coils are even going to coil farther. And so they're folded 4 times in order to have active sites. Remember that enzyme had an active site so that A and B could come together and form? So this is an example of how it's made, but then it has to be modified to work properly. Aren't we a walking chemistry set? Now you're seeing how important chemical reactions are and helpers of enzymes to make these happen even faster. Here's the animation of folding.
Each protein has a unique primary structure, a particular number and sequence of amino acids making up the polypeptide chain. 20 different amino acids are used to build proteins. Theoretically, the various amino acids could be linked in almost any sequence, forming an almost infinite variety of different proteins. This illustration shows some of the amino acids making up the primary structure of a protein. The structure of a single generalized amino acid is shown below. The main backbone of every amino acid is the same. This is what forms the backbone of the polypeptide chain. It is the R group, which projects out from the backbone, that makes each of the 20 kinds of amino acids unique.
So he's getting into some detail that you're not going to be tested on, but notice the carbon here is the chain, and the backbone, and all 20 amino acids are the same. This is showing 1 amino acids. They're all the same except for this right here, which is going to be replaced. Remember, there's 20 different amino acids, so there's 20 different R groups, which stand for replaceable. But you're not having to know the names of the individual portions of that. When you take anatomy and physiology, you'll get into the detail on that. Just understand that the building blocks of proteins are its monomer called an amino acid. But you don't need to know the structure of it other than it is a building block of a carbon chain. The next one, nucleic acids. This is what our nucleus contains, DNA and RNA. So those are the 2 types of nucleic acids. You can see this is labeled as DNA, and it's got 2 lines that loop in on itself. They're spirals. They're going kind of in a circle. If you were looking down on them, it would be looking like a spiral staircase. And DNA has 2 of those ribbons, and RNA has 1 ribbon. You probably have learned in junior high that DNA contains the blueprints. It's our genetic code. It controls the cell. We're going to go over that in the second semester, how DNA actually controls it. And there's a central dogma, which means in biology, there's such a high importance about what DNA does that it's up here in the top. DNA and RNA. It's like this. DNA makes RNA. And RNA is going to be the instructions for making proteins. And it's a really fun, interesting unit that we're going to get later. The building blocks of DNA are called nucleotides. If you look closely, I'm going to go over here on RNA and box in. That's 1 nucleotide. That's another nucleotide. So it's coming up on the next slide. I guess we're going to do that detail when we cover it in our second semester. So you're not going to be tested on the 3 parts of a nucleotide right now. It's got a sugar and a phosphate right there, and these yellow things, they're called bases. It's pretty simple, 3 pieces to its nucleotide. Just understand that the building block, it's a monomer, and it's called a nucleotide. String a bunch of nucleotides together, and what do you get? You get a nucleic acid. So this is a summary of where we've been. We just finished by saying that these are the building blocks. These are the individual Legos. These are the building blocks. This is the product. You could say that these are the reactants. These come together to make a product. So nucleotides come together and they make nucleic acids, which are DNA and RNA. The building blocks of fats are these 2 molecules, fatty acid and glycerol, and they make a fat for energy storage. There are 20 amino acids in many different combinations. These monomers are going to make a polymer called a polypeptide, which is another name for a protein. Monosaccharides are 1 pieces of sugar. You bring those together and you make a many sugar. That might be a double sugar, disaccharide, a trisaccharide, which is a 3 sugar. After that, many up to thousands, polysaccharide, which are sugar. By the way, all sugars end in the word or phrase OSE. Glucose, fructose, sucrose, galactose, maltose. those are ending in OSE. Those are sugars, and that's what a carb is. Carbs are sugar for energy. Fats are big energy storage. Nucleic acids build our genetic code. Proteins build our structure of so many things. So the central dogma that I was telling you about, DNA has a segment right here, and this segment is going to be copied into a single strand during a process of, this means copying, single strand to from a double strand. So you have a double strand down to a single strand, and then that is going to be translated into a new language of an amino acid sequence. That's all you have to know. Genes are on DNA. They're going to be copied into RNA, and they're going to make a protein. Watch this video right here for the 4 biomolecules from the amoeba sisters. The link is shown right here. There's no notes to take, but after going over these notes, watch that, and I think things are going to click in. It'll be very helpful for you to watch that. All right. Happy study.